Alright, what is up, YouTube? It's Krod here, back with another good video for today. I will be covering the highly anticipated fight card of Saul Canelo Alvarez versus Callum Smith. Overall, this wasn't really too much of a performance that I was expecting out of this fight. And honestly, Canelo, he did his thing. He got the victory out of Callum. This is basically a blowout. I wasn't really expecting too much out of Canelo. Canelo isn't really the type of fighter I would expect for him to make too much damage in this fight to make it seem like he did anything successful. I personally think Callum Smith, he did not do what he should have done, which was use his advantages to his expenditure and actually give Canelo a fight. But I'm going to touch base on that in this fight card today, so you will hear a lot from me from this video. Alright, so we're going to start with the very first match. This is a really weird preliminary. I don't know why preliminaries are not televised, but Robert Greenwood had a draw with Alexis Eduardo Molina. It was like a little 4-rounder, 3 minutes. Ended up in a draw, but either way, not too much of an interesting fight. Next fight came in a 3rd round TKO victory for Christian Gomez as he went face forward with Angel Hernandez. Not too much of a good fighter, by the way. I never really enjoyed watching this guy fight. I've heard some things about him in YouTube videos, but either way, this wasn't too much of a fight that I was expecting out of him, and I would probably hope he can get his opportunity, but I don't think it's going to go that far with him because you did not show the media who you are as a fighter. And Christian, he's a very good fighter coming out of Mexico. He fights at 147, 27. Had his last couple fights, I guess, against 2 other Mexican-driven people. Diego Carmona, 5th round TKO victory, and then his previous opponent before that, Juan Alberto Gonzalez, 3rd round RTD, retired in the corner victory for him. So either way, I don't have too much high hopes for him, but I would hope you could probably step it up and fight a guy I don't know, maybe Vito Melnecki, or fight a kid maybe Rashad Mahdi, or maybe... Wait, does Alexis Espino fight at welterweight? Hold on. I'm pretty sure he does, so I'm not too sure. No, he fights at super middle, so 168. But yeah, fight a guy like Vito Melnecki, or fight maybe... Wait, how about Joey Spencer? I think Joey Spencer, he's what, 150? Or... I'm pretty sure he's welterweight. No, he's a middleweight. So yeah, either way, this guy should probably fight some tougher level competition. Because what I don't like out of these Mexican fighters that don't have too much of a, leg to stand on when it comes to media, to media-driven fights, is that they don't get the right opponent that's put in front of them, so that way they can actually prove themselves of who they are in the ring. And I think what I like out of Mexican PBC fighters versus Mexican DAZN fighters is that Mexican PBC fighters, they bring a show, and they're actually guys with a very seasoned resume, with guys that they've probably ran into in the amateurs or probably have sparred. And I have a lot more respect for those type of fighters because they come to fight and they actually want to they actually want to make a statement to make themselves well known for their division. And I think that's really the problem with a guy like Christian Gomez, which I never really heard of this kid, but he did his thing, 3rd round KO victory. I just think maybe next time, for your next fight, you should probably go up against a guy that has that same amount of skill set as you, so that way you can keep proving to the world who you are, so you can be on your way for world title contention. But either way, he probably has like a long way to go. So I'm not putting too much hope onto him until he proves that to me. Next fight was a really fun fight. Easy KO victory for my homie, Mr. Austin Amma Williams. Had a beautiful KO performance over Isaiah Jones. Honestly, I wasn't too surprised out of this. I don't know anything about this Isaiah Jones. I was more interested of like watching Austin do his thing and give himself a better chance to win and actually prove himself to the world of who he is. And I think Austin, he's a very good fighter. Let's not try to shut that down onto him. But the issue is that Austin's not being put with the right guys to bolster his resume higher, and I think that's not going to make him any better of him just knocking people out when he needs to be fighting maybe a guy like Lorenzo Simpson. And then if we're going to talk about top 50 contenders, maybe go after a guy like, I don't know, I would say maybe a guy like Marcelo Coceres. I'm just like taking a look at BoxRec for possible opponents. Fight Jason Quigley. I knew that Canelo was trying to fight that guy. Or maybe Luis Arias. I know he could definitely give Arias a fight, because Luis Arias is a very tough opponent, by the way. And he came off of a really bad mediocre performance against Luke Keeler, but beforehand he fought Gabriel Rosado, and Rosado gave him a tough fight, which a lot of people thought Rosado won that fight, but unfortunately that came to a draw. So Luis Arias definitely has a huge future ahead of him of what he wants to do with his career, and I think maybe a guy like that would be good for Austin. But then if we go into maybe at least at the top 30 in those rankings for BoxRec, we have Emmanuel Alim, maybe Toriano Johnson. That would be a pretty good fight. Maybe Yamaguchi Falco. He's some Brazilian fighter, which I've never heard of him, but I just see him here on the rankings. We could maybe go for Brandon Adams. I don't think so, but look, if Austin wants to be in contention for a world title, like he said that he wants to be in for as of the next year leading into 2021, yeah, you probably have to fight a guy like Brandon Adams. But I would say before you even get to that, fight a guy within the top 50, maybe like Demetrius Ballard. He looks like a really seasoned fighter, not fighting too much of what the higher top level guys. His only really tough outing probably had to have been Yamaguchi Falco for the vacant NABF middleweight title. But either way, it's just like, I don't know. I think if anything, if Austin really wants to get himself there to the next level, he really needs to start fighting guys that are at his level to give him all the rounds that he needs. And I think sooner than later we will see Austin Williams into the higher rankings. And not to mention, he actually called out Nikita Ababi. He's in his weight division where he said he wanted to fight him. So maybe if that fight could come to fruition next, that will definitely boost up Austin's stock, because they're both on DAZN fighting. But I don't know. Nikita did say that he's considering to move down to 154. I don't think that's a good idea. I think 160 is great for him, but he claims to say 154 makes him a lot quicker. But if he does move down to 154, then I guess that fight won't be made. But another fighter that Austin could probably take a chance with is Shane Mosley Jr., the son of the great Shane Mosley Sr. Very legendary boxer. So I think Shane Mosley Jr. would give a very awesome test to Austin. But who knows? There are a lot of options that Austin can go for, and I really do hope the best for him, because he's a very good fighter and a lot of people are sleeping on him. And I think a lot of fighters that are on the come up just like he is, he should really watch out for those type of fighters, because honestly, I think once Austin gets up to the higher level opponents, it's going to turn into a very difficult war of getting to the higher upper echelon opponents once you start meeting your contemporaries. But I think Austin's in a good position. I don't blame him because it's like, you're with Eddie Hearn, so you shouldn't be trusting everything of what Eddie is doing for you. And I think Austin said after the fight that he wants better opponents, and Eddie has to give that to him, or else he'll probably just go elsewhere. In which I don't blame him, because it's like Austin, he doesn't deserve to be how should I say, he shouldn't be treated like the same way with what Jamel Charlo went through and their come up, for him to grow as a fighter and make himself well known in their own respected divisions. But I think if Austin demands these fights and he gets what he wants from Eddie, we'll definitely see Austin becoming a future contender, if not a multiple division world champion. And I wouldn't be surprised, because Austin's a very good fighter. Although he came into the to the sport late at 19 years old, he's still a very well talented athlete. So yeah, let's get these fights going for Austin, and all respect to his team, and good luck for, I guess, for the future, for his career. Alright, so next fight. This is an awesome fight. This is a very beautiful performance by the great Raymond Savage Ford, that had a great performance against Juan Antonio Lopez. This is on the main card. So 126 featherweight contest. Raymond Ford knocked out Juan Antonio Lopez with a crazy check right hook that got Lopez to the ground. He wasn't able to get back up. Raymond dominated this guy all 7 rounds. But although this is a 8-rounder, he gave Lopez the fight of his life. Lopez is not really that good of a fighter, in my honest opinion. And this is why that I don't really like Mexican fighters coming out of Mexico with with no seasoned experience of knowing how to defensively adapt to American fighting styles or other versatile fighting adjustments, right? And I think that the problem with fighting guys out of Mexico is that a lot of Mexicans don't they don't work on their foot movement, and they focus too much on being overtly aggressive with very little defense, which most likely gets you knocked out. But if you're good at using Mexican style offensive aggression, then that's why certain Mexicans say, well, your offense is your defense, similar to what Leo Santa Cruz does. But that's not true. You have to be defensively crafted in order to perfect the aggressive nature of using Mexican style with maybe a Cuban influence of using aggressive boxing ability. And it's not always about getting the knockout. It's always about boxing intelligent, and then if the knockout come, then the knockout come. So either way, this fighter did not do anything right. He basically left himself wide open for Raymond to counterpunch him. Raymond caught this guy with really beautiful body shots. He got absolutely wrecked in a couple exchanges, which led him to get down in a couple rounds. But once I saw this guy get hurt and Raymond was pretty much on his way of knocking this guy out, I was just like, yeah, I'm not going to watch this guy anymore. He's not really that type of guy to be worthy to fight Raymond. And Raymond did his thing. He knocked this guy out in round 7. Very good victory, and I hope to see Raymond advance more in the division, where he does what he has to do to become great. And as we look at his box rec, he is 115 out of 1672 in the world. I say next fighters that he should really be aiming for. I don't know. I really want to go with maybe a guy like, I don't know, maybe, sorry. I mean, Raymond could probably go after, if we take a look at guys in like the top, 100. There's Rafael Rivera. There's Orlando Gonzalez. That's my homie. He can definitely go after, Ranfins, Encarnacion, or Pedro Medina. I've actually heard a lot of things about him. He's a good Puerto Rican fighter. He could definitely fight maybe a guy like, I don't know. Not too many guys that I know out of the featherweight division. Maybe Brian Chevalier, Yenifel Vicente. Yeah, I would actually like to see this fight, because if Raymond Ford can get past Yenifel Vicente, that would be a very good victory for him, because Yenifel, he's a dirty fighter out of the Dominican Republic, but if he can get past a guy like him, that will be a huge win for him, and then that will increase his stock a lot higher for him to go after the top guys in the division, like Gary Russell, Emmanuel Navarrete, or even Isaac Dagbe, Christopher Diaz, Patrick Conlon. That's my homie. So, I mean, there's plenty of options for Raymond, but I wish the best for him for his career. He's a very good fighter. A lot of people keep doubting him, and I really hope he does what he has to do, because honestly, I could really see this guy taking guys out in the division. Not too many guys that I think that will edge him. Not even guys like Robeisy Ramirez. I can see Robeisy getting knocked out by Raymond. But we definitely just have to see more out of him. There's definitely plenty of fights to be made for Raymond, but I'd say to start out, go after at least at the top 100 guys, and Raymond, he'll be on his way for world title contention. Give this man the shot, man. This kid is the next big thing. Alright, so down with that fight. Now we're down with the big boys. My boy Frank Cuban Flash Sanchez, that got a really, really good 7th round knockout victory over Julian Fernandez. Not too much of a good Mexican fighter, but he held his own against Frank Sanchez. It was a hard, tough fight. I would say, for the sense of trying to stay in there with a guy like Frank. Frank definitely gave this guy the work. He made Fernandez try to taunt Frank, I believe, at the 6th or 7th round. I think it was at the 6th round, but Frank basically just ate this guy alive. Caught that guy with a crazy right hook with an uppercut, and it was a very crazy knockout. Frank almost got, or I would say Frank almost got some form of a disqualification for fighting dirty by hitting this guy at the back of his head, or hitting Fernandez at the back of his head, which could have led to some form of a penalty of getting DQ'd. But Fernandez held his own. He gave a good fight. Unfortunately, he got knocked out, and Frank Sanchez came out as a victorious winner out of this fight. I think, honestly, Frank is the type of guy that should not be fighting 2-3-star level fighters. I think it's time for a guy like maybe Stephen Shaw, or maybe Joe Joyce, or maybe Michael Hunter, or Tony Yoka, or Oscar Rivas, or I wouldn't mind a guy like Luis Ortiz to go at it with him, or Charles Martin, or even Adam Konatsky, or Gerald Washington, or beat the living crap out of Huey Fury. That would be a great fight. Beat up Daniel Dubois. I would actually like to see that. That would be a very interesting fight. There's plenty of fights to be made for Frank. I just don't think, where he's going with fighting, opponents that he knows he can beat, that's just going to lead him to an opponent that's going to knock him out, and he's not going to be able to do anything about it, with having to deal with a very, how should I say, a very unpredictable fighter that can get him hurt in the event of getting knocked out. So I think it's time for Frank to take on the top 50 ranked opponents, or even top 25. Go after a guy like Filip Hrgovic. I think that would be a awesome fight for Frank. And there's plenty of other fights that Frank can go for. I just think it's already, like, I think it's already time for Frank to go for world titles, because, you know, like, we already know that, you know, the heavyweight division is at a pause because of Tyson Fury cheating on Deontay Wilder, and once they get their issue settled and Deontay Wilder beats living crap out of Fury, Anthony Joshua is going to be next, and all the other newer heavyweights that will probably come up to take over will probably be maybe Alexander Usyk, or I'd probably say Michael Hunter, or Joseph Parker, or Tony Yoka. I don't know. Honestly, I really don't care too much about the heavyweight division because it's not really that interesting, and it's getting bad because of all the corruption in boxing that's destroying the sport even faster. So hopefully that can be taken out of the equation, and, you know, we can see these big fights get taken down already, and then we go about our way seeing all the new fresh competition to take over the division. Alright, so the next fight. Oh, I'm very sorry. Give me 1 second. I have to go back to it. Alvarez. Sorry about that, guys. I don't know why that website did that to me. Alright, so the next fight was Mark Castro. Got an easy victory over Luis Javier Valdez in a third round KO. Not really so interested. Mark is a good fighter. Honestly, I'd probably like to see Mark versus Raymond. That would be a very, very fun fight to watch. But either way, Mark Castro got a really good fight against Luis Valdez. It was a decent fight, to say the least. Mark's been wanting to fight for quite some time. He was supposed to fight, I believe, on August 15th, but then for some odd reason he caught coronavirus, which is very weird. But for some odd reason he's okay, so that doesn't make any sense. But either way, Mark did his thing. He got the KO victory. Not too much of a, you know, great performance, I would say. He should have been a little bit more collected in his punches, but I think either way, Mark can do what he wants to do, but I think stylistically Mark is that type of guy to have a lot of speed in his punches, but when he finds a good shot, he can capitalize on it, and he needs to be a lot more he needs to be a lot more calm when he, you know, goes in with his combinations, because sometimes he'd be throwing wild punches. But I mean, this is only his first fight, which is really weird because he was on the co-main event of this card, which was very, very weird. And I think Frank Sanchez should have been at the co-main event, and Mark should have just been at the third to, but the second to last, you know, main event fight before the co-main event leading to the main event. But either way, it was a decent victory, and I hope Mark fights better competition, leading to more spectacular victories. Alright, so main event, Saul Canelo Alvarez versus Callum Smith. This fight was absolutely garbage in my opinion. Canelo Alvarez did his thing, but Canelo obviously took a guy like Callum Smith that came off of a really crappy performance against John Ryder, and Canelo just basically wiped the absolute floor onto Callum. Callum was absolutely devastated in the sense of he didn't even want to be there. Canelo just kept walking him down, throwing body shots, throwing jabs, which Caleb should have used his height and reach advantage to outbox Canelo. Canelo did absolutely nothing but just try to come forward and just take advantage of Caleb's, I guess, like, hesitant behavior to not fight Canelo off the outside, which he could have easily won this fight, which he did very decent in round one to use his jab, which he averages, I believe, at the most jabs out of the whole division. So, he's supposed to be jabbing most of the time in order to keep his offense intact. But Callum did not do anything like that. He just absolutely let Canelo demolish him. Canelo was hitting him with some crazy good shots, crazy hooks to the face, using those body shots, using crazy 6-7 combinations, which Canelo, let me tell you something about him. Canelo is not a good fighter. Canelo is only good when a fighter allows him to be good. And Canelo does not have the ability to use any of that explosive combination if it's against, like, let's just say a guy like Charlo or a guy like Andrade, or I would probably say that the Floyd Mayweather fight, where Floyd Mayweather, he was just straight up using counter jabs the whole fight to get Canelo off balance, and then once he got Canelo to an uncomfortable position where Canelo, he wasn't even throwing that many punches, Canelo just basically broke down. Canelo got himself worn out, and then Floyd basically just kept basically punching him around like a dummy doll, and basically Canelo, he had no answer for Floyd. And remind you, Canelo was 20 pounds bigger than Floyd. Floyd was like, I think, 147 or 146.7 coming into the fight, and Canelo was like damn near, I think, 170, 74 or 75 pounds. Like, his rehydration to the fight, or his rehydration weight coming into the fight against Floyd, was 10 times bigger than than he was at, I guess, the weigh-ins, right? And this is obviously for, I think, a catch weight at 160. But either way, it's like Floyd Mayweather dominated Canelo, and Canelo just had no answer for Floyd, because every time when he threw a punch, he has such a flat foot movement. He doesn't extend his punches off of his lead foot, standing on the tip of his toe. So he's not able to get that punch, off on time to actually hit Floyd. And Floyd just basically just walked him through. And, what I mean is, like, Floyd, he knows how to beat Canelo. Canelo is not that hard to take down once you have more athletic ability than him. And what Canelo doesn't understand is that he is not good until he fights a guy that has athletic ability. Because Callum, he just looked like an old man. He looked like an old man. He got absolutely punished. And Canelo just kept walking him down because Callum, he didn't use any athletic ability to utilize his jab, move around, make Canelo think, and then actually hit Canelo with good shots to actually destabilize him, mix up your combinations, and then boom. Once you have your defense as your offense, as that, defensive mortar to take down Canelo's strengths and use his weaknesses against him, then he can't do anything to Callum, because Callum has the taller height, or he has the height and reach advantage over Canelo, and he can use that to his ability to make Canelo uncomfortable to go for the knockout, or to just basically win off of points. And that's what Callum did not do. He stood there like an absolute, I don't even want to be rude towards him, because I got some decent respect for him, but he looked like an absolute, stubborn, basically a stubborn child. That's basically what Callum did. He did not want to bang with Canelo, but he wanted to somehow utilize some form of stalling in the fight to make Canelo get comfortable, and Canelo would somehow get tired throughout the fight, which Canelo, he was getting tired, he got gassed out, but Callum did not make Canelo more tired. He did not get Canelo to deep waters where Canelo would probably have to make harder inhalements to deal with harder punches that Caleb would throw at him, and then Caleb would somehow get his second win and then somehow try to knock out Canelo. No, that's not how you knock out Canelo. How you knock out Canelo is that you have to use athletic ability to get Canelo to a position where he cannot respond to your athleticism and your counters and your boxing ring IQ to make himself uncomfortable. And then you go for the knockout to make himself psychologically defeated. That is how you would knock out a Canelo Alvarez. But either way, this is a complete shutout. Callum absolutely embarrassed himself, and you British fighters are by far the worst fighters ever. Besides from like a few fighters, but honestly, British boxing is absolutely destroyed. Callum could have easily used his advantages over Canelo, but sadly he did not. He looked like an absolute idiot out there, and Canelo, destroyed him with pure ease because Callum made himself tailor-made for Canelo's, advantages. And remind you, Canelo does not have too much of a fast hand speed to actually hit people on time. So Canelo actually has slower reflexes and a much more just power punching style. So stylistically, it was all tailor-made for Canelo, and Canelo took advantage of it for his own benefit. But either way, it's like, Caleb Plant or Demetrius Andrade should have been in there with Canelo, and Demetrius Andrade pretty much made it clear that Callum Smith was not going to win this fight if he did not use his advantages over Canelo, and he made all the great points in the world, and stupid ass Chris Mannix wants to come out of his way trying to make it seem like Canelo is such a great fighter, when in the end he's not a good fighter. Canelo was not a good fighter at all, even in his prime, and coming to the current peak of his prime going down, Canelo is not getting any better. Floyd Mayweather made it clear that Canelo Alvarez has not gotten better ever since he fought Floyd, and Canelo has actually been decreasing in skill because he relies so much on his style to not be at it with a guy that has more of an athletic framework to make Canelo think. And Canelo, he cannot do that because all he does is come forward. He cannot go backwards. If I hit Canelo and I use my athletic ability to push him back, where Canelo, he has never had a fight with any black American fighters or even his own Mexican heritage of a American style or American fighting style, i.e. David Benavidez, for a more highly contested highly contested matchup. No, Canelo does not like to fight slick fighters. We can see this from the Erislandy Lara fight and the Austin Trout fight, and I would say, yeah, that would be pretty much it. But either way, it's just like Canelo, he cannot deal with a guy like Charlo. Like, after what we've seen with him and Callum, Charlo would absolutely destroy Canelo, and Canelo does not have no answer when it comes to hard counters and using athletic ability to move around the ring, control his distance, and to make sure he can work on the inside properly for punches. But he can't do that because it already showed that Callum, all he needed to do was use his height and reach advantage, and boom, Canelo loses. There is no fighter in boxing history that has actually beat his or her opposing fighter that has a longer height and reach advantage over the shorter fighter that does not have that. Andy Ruiz got pummeled by Anthony Joshua in the second rematch of their fight, but in the first rematch, or in the first match of their fighting duel, Andy Ruiz was able to get on the inside of Joshua, and then he was able to knock Joshua out because Joshua was being absolutely careless of not using his advantages in the ring, and then he started to bang with Ruiz, which led him to get knocked out. So that's obviously the same thing with Canelo. Canelo thinks that his style can just beat anyone when he's put in front of a guy that's tailor-made for his style. So stylistically, Canelo does not want to fight a guy like Caleb Plant or Jamal Charlo or even guys like Demetrius Andrade, because all three of those guys have athletic ability and they have a slick framework to make Canelo think. And Canelo cannot fight off of the back foot, and he has no defensive countermeasures to pick off shots off of his opponents to get the right blow for either a knockout victory or a good set of combinations to make himself win the fight easier. But either way, Canelo, had a very C-, performance. I thought if Canelo was going to hit Callum with some more bigger shots, that fight should have been stopped at least by the 8th or 9th round, or I'd probably say even sooner, because Canelo, he was well on his way knocking out Callum, but I guess his trainer decided to let him fight, and his trainer was going to stop the fight by round 10. But no, Callum was obviously holding, and he was looking at the clock to get away from Canelo's power. And Callum did not use any of his advantages over him. He never used any defensive ability at all. He just let Canelo hit him, and he got absolutely embarrassed. And he is not a good fighter at all. Quote unquote, the best super middleweight fighter in his division, and he gets absolutely demolished by a shorter opponent that does not have any advantages over the taller opponent, other than Canelo just had his way. But either or, this wasn't really too much of a fight that I was expecting to see an upset. But if Callum were to upset Canelo, that would have been a very, very awesome victory. But I'm not going to give a benefit of, I'm not going to give either man the benefit of the doubt, other than Canelo, he didn't do anything to make himself well known in this fight. But Callum, he didn't do the things that he should have done in order to get Canelo out of there, out of his comfort zone, and to make Canelo think and make Canelo feel uncomfortable, to put him in a position where he can get him hurt and possibly knock him out. But I think either way, Callum, he didn't have this fight, in any proper game plan, and he got absolutely, destroyed. But let me know in the comments section, what do you think of this fight? Do you even think Canelo is pound for pound number one? I don't think so. I think Canelo is absolutely garbage. I think his next fight really needs to be big fights, starting with Jamal Charlo, David Benavidez, Caleb Plant, Demetrius Andrade, every single fighter that he should have been fighting for the past 5 years that have been calling him out, and I would probably say including now. Alright, so that's pretty much what I gotta say. Thank you guys for watching, and be sure to like, rate, comment, and subscribe, and do what you gotta do. To hell with all the Canelo haters, and thank you very much for watching. Bye.